Okay, hi everyone. So first of all, just want to say thanks for everyone for coming today, even though tomorrow is Friday and most of you guys have to get back to work, so I appreciate it. Before I start, I just want to talk a bit more about my background. So my name is Yessen. I was born and raised in Kazakhstan. It's a country in Central Asia. Moved to Korea in 2017 to get my degree in undergrad, and then graduated in 2022 February with from Sejong University with computer science degree. However, I've been working as a developer in the industry even before my graduation. So I was working like since 2020 July. So since every classes and assignments were online, I was just taking the classes inside of the office and working at the same time. And currently I'm working as an iOS engineer in the company called Reed. It's a Korean AI company. Particularly I'm working the project called TOEIC. It's an AI prep for TOEIC exam in Korea. So to start with, I just want to share with you guys this very interesting comment that I found last year in the forum. This is a comment under the xcode application in the App Store. It's from the guy, the developer from Kazakhstan, as I understand. And as you can see, some part of the comment is in Russian. So I asked our friend ChatGPT to translate it. So let me read it for you. The title is very bad tool, very baggy. We're a team from Kazakhstan and we are starting to write our own xcode alternative. Because the xcode team can't write performance-oriented programs, it crashes every time. No wonder. P.S. Hello everyone. Due to constant crashes, I couldn't meet the deadline. I got fired from my job. My girlfriend left me, saying she doesn't need a guy without a job. Later, my wife left me. When I told her about the girlfriend, I decided to gather my own team and write my own xcode. Thank you very much for ruining my life. When I read this comment, this was my reaction. I mean, we all know that xcode crashes all the time. It's like so buggy, but since we don't have any other options, we just have to stick with it. And I feel quite sorry for the guy, since this regular stuff, the slow development affected his life in a negative way. Like, he had to break up with his girlfriend and divorce with his wife. But I kind of wonder what he's doing right now and did he succeed or not with the xcode, because I would be down to test it out. So that's the reason why I decided to give today's speech for you guys to kind of help speed up your work, some process of your work during day-to-day life. And specifically, I'm going to be talking about the networking in client-side in iOS. Since, as an iOS developer, we all have to know how to make the API calls to the server, how to communicate with backend, how to get the requests, like get the list of data, or change the database from the client side. And some of you guys might know the libraries called Alamo Fire or Moya. It's this SDKs it's just libraries that help during our work. It pretty much does all of the dirty work. But some of you guys just maybe writing the networking service by their own, like from zero. And just to kind of remind what does it take to make an API from the suite, from iOS. This code was taken from Stack Overflow. So if you need, you can check the QR code and just see. So the question was asked, I think, in 2017, and the reply was, I think it was between 2017 or 2019. So the code is kind of old, but it's just pretty straightforward. The guy is so first of all, we just have to make the request body with dictionary. I mean, this is very old. Like these days, we got protocols like Codable, which you can just create struct and with the variables inside. But anyway, then the second step would be just to create a URL request with the URL, and inside you can see the host, the URL itself. The path is logging. Then we customize the request by setting it as a post method. We put some HTTP body and add some custom headers inside. And the final step would be just using the data task API, call the API itself. But since it's quite old, this is a very old way. Like, as you can see, there is a callback handler, data response and error. So inside of this, you actually have to take the response, which is JSON, and kind of fetch it, open it to readable structure. And then you also cache the error, so kind of messy and scary to read. So luckily for us, as soon as Combine was introduced by Apple for us in WWDC 21, we got new API which is called Data Task Publisher, which kind of makes our life easier. So if you're interested, you can Google the WWDC 21. The title is Advanced Networking, Part 1. The session is very easy to understand. So using Data Task Publisher makes our life a bit easier and the code a bit more readable. So as you can see here, we can use the functional programming with try map, decode, map some error. So it's a bit more readable, but still it's kind of hassle to code, I think, like for me personally, not sure about you guys. And this is just one function that you can reuse in the future. So for instance, if you got new requests from the backend team like that, okay, we got new endpoint about the user, and the new response looks like this. So this is JSON data, just some example. You got this, and the backend says, okay, this is a task, please write it on your iOS side. So what would be the first step? And before I'll start, in any company it's just different way of sharing how the response looks like. Maybe you guys use Swagger, maybe you guys use Postman or some internal documentations. This is just pure example. This is how I used to do in my first work. So you first have to see what the response looks like, what kind of keys it has inside. So it has status, message, data. Inside of data we have user, then we have posts, then we have settings. And by analyzing the JSON code, we just have to start writing our own structs, our own models in the project. So as you can see, there's API response with status, message, data, and then data is custom struct itself, which has user, array of posts, settings, and so on. So we had to write around how much? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 structs by our own. And I mean, this is not a big deal, but it might take some time. For me, I think it would take like 10 minutes or 15 just to I have to analyze everything, see what kind of types the data is, then write this one, double check if I don't have any typos or stuff. And this is just for one endpoint. For example, you have another endpoint, which is not user, but like, I don't know, user followers or something. Then you have to do it again. But okay, you did this, you have your request function, then you try to run a unit test or run a project. You get this one, this good friend, he not found. Not sure about you guys, but I have faced this issue quite a lot when I was doing the iOS with everything customly. And usually what this error means is that this compiler cannot decode the JSON given the struct that you gave to them. So for example, let's go back. So for example, you see the user, and in here you can see the user got name, and we wrote name there, but I mean, we're all human, we can make a human mistake. And instead of name, we can just put name me or something. And then if you do that, you'll get this error. And this will be your reaction. Well, at least my reaction. And this is kind of annoying. And then you go back to the JSON file, you go back to your code, you analyze, double check everything. Then you go to backend team and say, okay, I think your JSON is not right. And then the backend team says, no, everything's right. You go back to your work and check it again. So quite a lot of time, more than 1 hour at least. You get demotivated, you get sad, and your work gets slow. So what if I say that all of this can be automated and generated? So instead of spending like 1 or 2 hours, you can spend 2 seconds with 1 click. And OpenAPI technology can help us with that. So what's OpenAPI at first? In simple words, OpenAPI is kind of specification of, or documentation, how the endpoint should look like, how should it behave. What kind of URLs does it have? What kind of input data or output data does it have? What kind of errors does it have? It's kind of documentation that you can read in terms of YAML file or JSON file. So this is an example of YAML file which was generated by ChatGPT again. So as you can see here, it got the info, title, simple API. It got the description version of it. It got the URL, api.example.com. And beneath it, we got pass. So the first endpoint would be just items, which is get request and give some some data, the array data, the type of string. It's pretty straightforward to read, understand. But you might ask, okay, yes, we understand what's OpenAPI, we understand what is YAML file or JSON file, but what can we do with it? So the answer is just OpenAPI generator. And this is what was introduced by last WWDC in 23, this June. You guys might have seen it. And it was open sourced by Apple. This is open source, you can find it in GitHub by typing Swift OpenAPI generator. It's not that popular yet, it has only 700 stars and almost 40 issues. But today I'm not gonna talk about it. I'm gonna be talking about the real guy. This is another open source, which was introduced way before the Apple did. It's also open source in GitHub. You can find by typing OpenAPI generator. As you can see, it has more than 3,000 contributors, more issues, 4,000, quite a lot. But it has like around 20,000 stars. And the reason why it's so big is because this repo contains all of the language. It supports almost all of the languages that you can know. Swift, Kotlin, JavaScript, Java, Go, Rust, all of them. That's why it's pretty big. So just using this OpenAPI generator, using the YAML I showed you before, in 2 or 3 seconds you can create all of the networking services, all the models by not coding anything. And for the setup, it doesn't take much stuff. As I said, you just need spec file or your endpoints, installed OpenAPI, which you can install with Homebrew, for instance, and you just need xcode project. That's pretty much it, what you need. So let's just try and see how does it work. I hope it doesn't fall. Is it good?
Yeah. When you share the screen, you might have, you want to see the code here and so here.
Oh yeah.
So you might want to duplicate the screens. Oh, it's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, so for some live coding, okay, you guys probably can't see. Okay, this is just simple. I created a simple project in SwiftUI, which doesn't do anything. It's just simple view with VStack and image inside with Globe. And I already created the package for networking. It doesn't have anything itself as well, just the empty file. So what I'm gonna do is, so here I'm right now in the directory of the project, Seoul Meetup. You can see here I already got the specification, which it's also open. You can find it in the internet provided by OpenAPI itself. This is the open server for pets called pets, and it got a couple of APIs like get the pet, upload the pet, as I remember, and more. So let's just try using this YAML file, generate our networking service. Like as you can see, I don't have anything here. I don't have any models. I don't have any services. So I already got installed the OpenAPI generator in my laptop. Can you guys see? Is it readable? Okay. So the command will be just easy. I already did it, so it will be, one sec. Open API, what? Yeah, this is the command. And to explain you what does it do, so OpenAPI generator itself is a command, generate. We got to put the spec file as an input, pets YAML, which is this one. Then we have to choose the generator, which is Swift 5 for our case. Then O means where we want to create our files. So since my package name is networking inside of Seoul Meetup, it should create here, hopefully. And in here I also have the configuration, OpenAPI config.yaml. Just to understand what does it do, let's see. I'll open for you. It just have some simple properties like API docs, model docs, false. And this will be the package name, REST API. And I want to have my response as async await. I mean, this one can be anything. It can be combined. It can be the old, callback response. But since async await is more readable, I just use async await. So let's try. Okay, seems like it's done. Let's check. Now we can see here that I got my package REST API. It has pet API inside, store API, user API. It got all the models. all of the classes were just generated by themselves. Just to check, yeah, this one was changed as well, as you can see. Let's just change this to 5.9. Some indentation. Build succeeded, and just for case, I think we should also add the dependency. Yeah, REST API. So before I ran the OpenAPI generator, there was nothing here. And then in our app, let's try and run some code. So for instance, if I want to add some text of the pet name, for example, I'll have my state pet, which is the type. Oh, and here, of course, I have to import. What was it? Pet. Let's make it optional, but I think, oh, it works. Okay. And then here, I have just simple API request get pet, which returns the pet with ID, and default ID is 1. And if we go here, we can see that this is all generated by the OpenAPI. You will just throw the pet from the request. And then here, what was it? Task pet. So, and then here, let's just put some text in it with pet name. And since pet is optional, since it's optional, let's just put some default data inside. Oh, no. Which will be just loading. Yeah, should be fine. Succeeded, let's try it. Taking some time. Didn't work, 1 sec. But at least it should show the globe, right? Oh, yeah, loading. Oh, 1 sec. Task. Weird. Not sure. It's open server. Oh. Let's see. What was it? Oh, I forgot the URL. Let's try again. Should work. Weird, 1 sec.
It's the demo curse.
Yeah, that's why I was afraid to make the demo, but Florian said you have to do it.
It's a curse.
It's a curse, yep.
Can you check the URL of the doc, the API screen?
Oh yeah, let's check it. Oh. What was it? Pets 1. Unknown. Well, I guess it's just the URL issue. But okay, the point was that with just 1 click of generation, we got all of these files for free. All of these models, all of this response helpers and stuff. And the good part is that if this pets file changes, if for example there will be some update in the backend, and for instance inside of pet, like there will be not ID or category or something will change, by just running the command again it will change automatically. Unfortunately the demo didn't work fine, but whatever. And yeah, that was the live coding. So it all sounds good and great. It all sounds good and great, but what would be the downsides? For me personally, I think the downsides are pretty obvious. Like, for example, if your backend has some headers in OpenAPI, from my experience, it's not going to be automated, but whenever you call the API from your code, it will be as the function parameters. So every time you have to add the headers by yourself. That's kind of bad and not very convenient. So personally, in our team, we had to customize the generator, and in order to do that, you have to know Mustache. I'm not sure if you guys heard about it, but it's pretty hard to and not easy to change. The second one is that OpenAPI unfortunately doesn't have that perfect documentation. Later I'll show you how does it look like, but for me, when I was just starting, it was like mess. I didn't know what to do, where to start and stuff. And there are not that many tutorials in the YouTube as well. That's why I hope it will be helpful, the thing that I'm doing right now. And again, it's not that easy to set up. I think I spent like 2 or 3 days to just understand how does it work. And finally, like, if your team doesn't use OpenAPI and you want to start it tomorrow with your team at your work, it requires the whole team to engage, because you can't just do it on the iOS only. You have to persuade the backend team, like, okay, let's use OpenAPI, guys, and then they have to study, because, as I said, it's kind of specification of how your server works. It's pretty much it from my side. In conclusion, like, I created this repo, it's open. If you go there, there will be some useful links, like the documentation for OpenAPI Generate itself, the public repository, the pet APIs that I used before, Swagger Playground, and the .pc video for OpenAPI Generator. So if you want, you can just go there and see. So that's pretty much it about the OpenAPI. And in conclusion, I just want to use the chance and kind of promote my app that I created this year. It's also the tool that helps you save the time during your work. It's called SizeMeUp. And whenever you create the pull requests, as an iOS developer, you usually have to put some screenshots of how or what kind of changes did you do. And when I was doing that, when you drag and drop the image to the GitHub pull request, the size is kind of weird. So I had to go Google how to change the format and stuff. It also took me some time. So I just decided to create this app, which is will be, not open. It will be sticking here. You can put the URL here, widths, and it's just gonna generate the URL which you can copy and paste to your GitHub, and it will be the size that you want. So here's the QR code if you want from the App Store. And finally, I just want to say Rahmet, which means thanks in Kazakh language, for coming today, for listening to me. In this QR, you can find my LinkedIn if you have any questions or you want to connect. Just anytime you can tag me. Yeah, thank you for listening, and I hope it was helpful. Can I just stop the recording? There will be Q&A, right?
Yeah, we will see. Just
Just let it go. Okay.
So thank you, Yessen, for this precious knowledge. My bad. The curse of the demo. But yeah, probably from the URL. Any question related to the OpenAPI, related to what Yessen has been presenting?
Please, any questions? Yeah.
So what would be the actual benefit, for example, because of course, let's say I'm using core data. Can you actually, I will still need to create my core data models manually. So the only thing I'm getting is the endpoints?
So that's what I faced as well. Like in my project or let's say in my project, I have my own models inside of the project, which I use specifically in iOS, and I also have the models which were created by OpenAPI. So what I did was just create some kind of bridge controller which maps the models from the OpenAPI models to your own. That's what I did. Or if you have time, you can maybe customize the generator, mustache and stuff.
So let's go further.
Yeah.
Let's say I want to have a testable code.
Okay.
I want to be able to create mocks for all of my endpoints in code.
Inside of the generated code or your own?
I want to provide custom responses for the endpoints that the OpenAPI generated.
So that's what I faced as well. So that's why I created another service. So kind of, let's suppose I had pet API, which was generated by OpenAPI. So what I did is I created, let's say, Seoul iOS Meetup pet service, which is my custom service, which calls the request from itself. So I created my own functions, and I actually, from my project, I don't call the OpenAPI functions, I call the service that I created. So for that, I created mocks for tests and live as well. Yeah, that's what I did.
Just, is it reliable? Because it just feels like if you're adding so many these automatic generated layers, if something goes wrong, you might miss that it's not working. Let's say you get a false positive, then you think it's working, but it's actually not. So I'm just like how.
Well, from my experience, I never had issue on generate itself. It was issue in spec file if I had to do it customly. But you know, there are also generators to generate the spec file. Also, Florian asked me to show how the spec file was created, but I thought maybe it's not related to us as iOS. But what I know, like if you're using Kotlin Spring, you can write the code in Kotlin, like structs and approximately how the API behaves. Then you run the generator, which generates the spec file I showed. And for your question, personally, I never faced any issues with generator, but I mean, of course, there might be some issues with the bugs, but since the repo is quite old and there are so many people who are using it, I don't think there should be some any critical issues.
What if you're using WebSockets? Does it support WebSockets, or is it only basic HTTP request?
The OpenAPI spec doesn't. You don't document.
OpenAPI doesn't
No, you
support
don't.
WebSockets.
There is
Oh, that's
other. There are other.
So GraphQL is better because that will support sockets and calls.
I mean, the doc itself, the OpenAPI spec, you cannot document
Sockets.
WebSocket.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's out.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Yep.
Oh, this guy can ask hard question. He's from Google.
My question is that how, like, I'm not very familiar with the project structure in iOS, but like, I think it's bundled. So my question is, when you define a like schema file, like the YAML or whatever for your OpenAPI, how does the backend also access it? Because it also have to generate it for the backend decoration as well.
Good question. So your question is how backend can access it, right?
Yeah, basically, like,
Yeah.
like it should be, I think it should be stored in one place. So.
Yeah. So,
Or
as
how
a-
do you do it in your company? If you,
I'm not sure if I can talk about my company, but I'll answer your question. So as I said before, there is also generator to generate the spec file for instance, in Kotlin Spring. So what I would do, I think one of the options would be just to have your own separate repo for the interface. And then whenever you make release in GitHub, it opens the Swagger, it generates the Swagger. I actually have to show you, one sec. Where is it? Okay, maybe this one, no. Oh, Playground. Wait, have you heard about Swagger before? This is Swagger. Swagger is kind of the tool that you can check what the API looks like, what's the response and the request. So usually it should appear here on the top corner. So there will be hyperlink and it will navigate you to file and you can just download the YAML file. Then for the backend, it's same as with iOS or Android. You can just run the generator and it will generate the code for the APIs. And inside you just have to write the logic like with database and stuff.
does it mean that this file is kind of like independent and it's get released and then like both iOS project and the backend like kind of like gets it somehow, fetches it?
Yeah,
and
so-
it generates like the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you need this file between every developer in the team, backend, Android, frontend, iOS. It's this kind of handshake or documentation how the as I said, the network service is behaving. Good question.
And on top of it, I would say, I don't know if you can say about read, but I'm always curious to ask people because I really love OpenAPI. And I always ask people questions. In your company, who is the person responsible of writing the OpenAPI?
The spec file.
Yeah. Because
It is-
usually there are two different group of companies. So I wanna, I don't know if you
Let me think if I can answer it. Well, I'll say there is no one guy who is responsible for it. So whenever we have new APIs or any change in the network, we have a meeting or to discuss how the request part or how the response should look like, and then everybody is doing it.
Okay. But who, like,
Yeah.
because I've seen two kind of companies.
Okay.
One is the backend developer write the doc because somehow
Yeah.
they create the API. So, but what I think is the OpenAPI spec should be written by someone like responsible of like architecture somehow.
Mm.
Like at a higher level, because it's a more profound decision, like thing you make, and it should not, in a lot of languages, like Java and Node.js, you also have decorators that you can, when you build your API, you can actually say, write your OpenAPI document with the code. So this is why you have two kind of people, and if you use this approach, then that's why the backend people actually write the doc, because they write the API, the document, and they generate the doc and the OpenAPI spec without writing the YAML file, but just by code.
Yeah.
And I think that's a terrible decision.
Oh, okay.
Because I always think that it should be written either in YAML or either like if you use like the Swagger editor, because you need this kind of you need meetings between the front end team, the back end team, and everything should be involved. And I think making the documentation by the backend API, it's not enough. And so, but I was curious. I don't know, in your company, are you using the OpenAPI spec? And if it's the case, like, who is actually responsible for writing it? So it's always like, oh yeah, but they are writing it. What kind of clash is that? So, yeah. Any other questions? No questions. I had one. I don't know if Clement actually was the same question, but so first, have you tried the new?
Suites?
Yeah, this one. Have you tried it? Like, do you like it? Or
Personally, I haven't tried it in the code, but I watched the WWDC video, and I think it was like 20 or 25 minutes. And instead of brief file, I think they're using SPM. And as I remember, you can just, as a lead or something, you can add the command inside of your xcode project. Whenever you build, it will update the spec and update the code. But it looks cool, but it's still young.
Yeah,
So-
features that are not available.
Oh, really? Not yet?
Yeah, I mean,
Oh.
the thing you said about the headers, or you didn't talk about also when you have like a multi-part, that's a tricky one as well.
Yeah.
That, a lot of tools doesn't get right. But I've seen a lot of activity in the Swift, in the Apple repo recently. So yeah, starting to get things done, because it's always real. Like, your OpenAPI spec, your API doesn't have just get request.
Yeah.
If you have just get request, it's fine. But you often have headers. Also you have authentication. Refresh tokens and so on.
Well, that's the biggest problem.
And yeah, of course. So it's always like it looks good on paper,
Yeah.
but there is always so many twists that you have to do, because your API is not just simple get request, just get paid whatsoever. So any more thoughts on this? Yes.
So as I said, it has its own downside. It's very hard to customize, of course, but like for my case, I had to customize the bit and go to Mustache. I mean, it's doable. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's doable, but it takes a lot of time. And I think it's just everything has its own pros and cons. So before you decide if you want to start OpenAPI or not, you have to discuss with your team if you guys ready for these issues or not. And like as I showed you, the OpenAPI repo has 4,000 issues and nobody is taking responsibility to answer to them. So you just have to go and customize it. I mean, with ChatGPT it would be easier to customize the mustache, but still you have to understand how it works. So yeah. And specifically, as you mentioned about the headers with token and authorization, that's a big pain. Big pain, I'm gonna admit it. But I mean, as I said, pros and cons.
And one of the things that the Swift generator is allowing you to is you can also generate like a mock server. So it's pretty handy. You know, if you don't have like if you don't want to use the real API and you may be stuck in the plane or the subway and you want to do like some offline work. And is it possible with this one to generate a mock server as well?
Not from OpenAPI, but I had to do it by my own.
Okay.
Yeah, I had to create second layer of service and make mock by myself. Use another generator there, like source 3.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not handled by OpenAPI, so you have to handle by yourself as well.
Okay. Any other questions? No. All right. Thank you very much. Yes, and thank you.
Thank you. Hope it doesn't fall.